I like how you're buzzing. The buzzing got a little bit louder right as we started. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to Space Truck, the never-ending voyage through space and time to deliver. What do we deliver in this time?
Food, probably. Food? I don't know. I have no idea. It's whatever's profitable at any given time. Could be slaves, could be food, could be some rare materials. You just never know.
So it's the first episode, or really episode 0, and you're already saying that we're going to trade slaves.
Say what? My bad.
This is why, like I said, we're gonna do a test episode. You gotta keep this snappy. Anyways, I am Joey, your co-captain, and with me is my co-captain, Jaymin.
Hi,
Jaymin. And
I'm the one flying.
Yes, you are the one flying, but that's okay because we're gonna talk about video games. Because space, while infinite, is kind of boring, so gotta keep ourselves occupied. So, what are you playing lately, Jay?
Lately, I've been playing Space, and League of Legends and Elite Dangerous.
Well, I know you're playing Elite Dangerous, but
yeah, I still play it from time to time.
I don't ever want to talk about League of Legends ever. We should avoid ever talk about League of Legends. So I guess we're gonna talk about Space. Why are you playing Space? Because
I'm making a video. Space is a game I got it in early access back in like November of 2013 or so, and I didn't really play it until about 6 months ago, and it made me mad. So now I'm playing it more to see if it can make me less mad, and it still makes me mad, but less so.
Why does it make you mad?
Because it's a game that was in early access for about 12 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, tiny bit longer, and it feels very much like a game that was in early access for a year. They had originally planned to make it like 5 years, like a 5-year plan, but they ended up dropping it after a while because it wasn't very profitable. They weren't marketing it at all, so it's one of those games that it's a game that's bad that you've never heard of before.
Well, no, I think people have heard of it. It's from Double Fine.
Yeah, it's from Double Fine, yeah.
So they started off with Amnesia Fortnite, which was in 2012, I think. Yeah, 2012. Yeah. And that whole idea was that their studio wasn't in a great cultural space. I don't know how to say that. Like, I guess they just weren't in a great situation after everything that happened with, was it Brutal Legend?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to shake things up, so they did Amnesia Fortnite, a bunch of games, and see what everybody liked, and they put out a whole bunch of options for voting, and people voted on Space. So it wasn't like that. It's not that like people don't know about it or they don't like it. It's that, they put it out there, and it received, I think, second of all the votes.
Yeah, it got second. First was Hack and Slash, and let's see, they promised that they would make like the first 5 games, or the top 5 voting games into games, and so far only Space and Hack and Slash got releases. The other game that came in, I think, third was a game called White Birch. As far as I know, or as far as in my limited research, I didn't see any references to it outside of Amnesia Fortnite.
Yeah. Because that was like a platformer like Journey, right?
I have no idea. Like, all I know about it is what it was in the Amnesia Fortnite informational, and the other 2 games, I think they even had the top 6, I think was what it ended up being, but the other 3 games I've never, other than White Birch, I've never heard of the other 3.
Well, because it was. Hold on, let me rack my brain. I should probably look this up beforehand, but off the top of my head, it was. No. Costume Quest got made. Costume Quest got made out of all the whatever it was. Costume Quest and the Sesame Street game got made.
Well,
so this is why 4 of them. Yeah.
This is why we have these talks. Now I have to go back and rewrite my review.
The Sesame Street game was a prototype that they had made during Amnesia Fortnite, and it became a Kinect game for the 360 called Once Upon a Monster, I want to say. Yeah, so my memory's not that good, but I think it was Once Upon a Monster, because it was a like a music game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was originally called like Happy Songs or Happy Song.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
This sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Costume Quest I know was also somewhere in there. I know that Costume Quest was definitely a Amnesia Fortnite game, and I know around that time they made Stacking, but I don't think Stacking was an Amnesia Fortnite game.
I don't think so.
All
of this was happening right at about the same time as Broken Age was being sort of in, I want to say, pre-production.
Yeah, that's even before they went out to Kickstarter with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then a couple months later, Broken Age comes out on Kickstarter, and they get more money than they asked for, and Broken Age turns into 2 games, and sort of all throughout that time, Space Base gets a early access release on Steam, and from then on, it just feels a lot like Space Base sort of got whatever was left in terms of money wise and things like that. And they have a lot, like the concept is great. It's a build your own space station sort of idea, and you have to worry about your people, and you got to give them jobs, and some jobs they don't want to do, and they get depressed if they have to go mining and they hate mining. Then they get depressed when they do that. So there's a lot of really cool ideas in it, but it's not. It's just it feels like a game that was in development for just a year, and they originally wanted it to be 5, and so it has all of the problems that you would expect from a game like that. I would say it's right on the edge of being unplayable. Yeah.
What a stellar review! Right on the
nicest way I can put it. I really when I say this game makes me mad. I'm serious. Like, yeah, it's not that great, but I keep giving it more chances because I really like the idea. I really do. I really like the idea. But yeah. So what have you been playing?
No, wait. So why? Hold on. I don't know how much you want to talk about this because I know you want to make a video about it. But like, why to all those things?
Why do I keep giving it chances?
Any of those questions, any of those statements could be answered. Like, I got to answer that with a why, and you could go off probably for another half an hour on that. So I mean,
yeah,
answer what you want, but I want to know what the.
I go back to it every now and then just to see if it's as bad as I think it is, and it kind of is in a lot of ways. I think that what it comes down to is the system they have for depression. It's like overpowered, and there's no way to fix it. So you'll have people who will just stop doing their jobs at any given time just because they're depressed, and it doesn't matter how big your pub is, or if you assign them to a room, or if you give them their perfect dream job or anything like that. Just eventually they stop doing their jobs. I think people who are assigned to mining are the only people who keep doing their jobs regardless of how they feel.
Yeah.
But you have this issue where it especially affects doctors. Like, doctors just stop doing their jobs after a while. And one of the jobs of the doctors is to dispose of dead bodies. So
that could be problematic. Okay.
Yeah. After a while, people just, you have all these dead bodies piling up on your space station. None of the doctors feel like moving the dead bodies. And then so everybody gets depressed and even more depressed. And so then they stop working, and then it just it just compounds into these major problems. But the thing is that you could do everything perfectly as a player, and it's still up to chance of whether or not that'll happen. And so far, it's happened every single time I've played the game. At some point, everybody stops doing their jobs, starting with the doctors.
And since you're talking about a game that is, in essence, a complex system, I mean, that's what makes the game compelling, is that it's a complex system. And when something like that breaks down, it's just infuriating. Probably doubly infuriating because they discontinued support for that game in
November of 2014.
November 2014. I thought it was May of last year. Jesus.
No, they released it in October. They released the full version in October of 2014, and they went to work doing bug support or bug splatting and things like that. And by November of 2014, the entire dev team was laid off, and Space Base has not received an update since November of 2014.
Oof. Okay. Now I'm understanding. That answers the why. That answers the why of why you're so pissed off about this.
Yeah, it's now February 2016, and the game is still broken.
Okay, that makes sense. And you said, but they said the community is patching it, or
yeah, there's a couple of subreddits you can go to find a couple mods and sort of ongoing support from the fan base and stuff like that. But and you know, when it comes down to it, that's just a couple of dedicated fans that run a subreddit. It's not Double Fine proper or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can't be. They fired those people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, that's. I'm not. I don't mean to shit on them. I'm just saying that that's what happened, because that's the reality of it. When you're talking about the average salary in video games is $100,000 a year. So I mean, it's not like you can, if a game isn't making tons of money, it's extremely hard to keep like it was a staff of 8 or 9 probably for that game, or what was
I think they had up to 15. I want to say. Yeah,
so you're talking about $150,000, or sorry, that's no, that's not how you do math, but. It'd be nice if it was $150,000 for 15 people to make a video game, but no. Well, not nice for those people, but that's only 15 people versus everybody. So wait, Algae, you're selling drugs? Oh, you're buying drugs.
Oh no, I'm buying Levain brandy. And let's see.
You've distracted me temporarily, so
that's fine. Yeah, you can buy illegal drugs, like beer, wine, liquor, tobacco. And, you got medicines. This place doesn't sell any of this, though. So
if we get pulled over, do I, throw that out the airlock, or how does this work?
Yeah, I mean, you can. We'll just, hyper drive is a thing.
Okay. Well, okay, to answer your question from before, I finished 2 games this last week, which is something for me because I haven't had any time, really. So that's why I figured this might be a good time to talk about video games, because I finally actually finished 2 games. And they were Batman Arkham Knight and Lifeline.
Oh, you beat Arkham Knight?
I did. I beat Arkham Knight, and I finished Lifeline. I know I talked to you very briefly about Lifeline, and you made fun of me.
I'm sure I probably did.
No, you definitely did, because Lifeline is from 3-Minute Games. It's an iOS game, so it's an iOS dev that's owned by Big Fish Games. And it was written by Dave Justice, the guy who wrote the comic book. I actually thought it was the guy. When I first was recommended the game, I was told that it was the writer of Telltale's Wolf Among Us, which I haven't played yet, and I'm probably playing very soon. But I was like, hey, Wolf Among Us, I know that lots of friends that really like that, and here's the writer, so it's probably pretty good. Turns out he was the writer of the comic book adaptation of the game, Telltale. So I was like, all right, okay. But that said, it's really well written for what it is, because it was really quite popular for a while. That ship is really loud. Yeah. Future problem to work out. Ship noise. Anyways, where was I going with that? So yeah, Lifeline. So it was a really popular game for a while because it was the first game to work on the Apple Watch, and so I guess it was either on sale or something recently. I don't know why I picked it up, but it was recommended to me, so I picked it up, and it was good. And instead of it, because it has to work on the Apple Watch, instead of it being a straight text adventure, it's more of a text adventure.
Oh, is this the one where you have to take care of the kid?
This is I don't know if I'd say he's a college. He or she's a college. I'm getting to that. But you're taking care of. There's an astronaut person, college kid, that gets stranded on a moon when his or her ship goes down. And I keep stumbling all over the pronouns because the character's named Taylor, and it's never made clear what her gender is. Which is kind of cool, because the more you play it, it is kind of a question of more importantly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the character's gender is, but it's the kind of game that you want to talk about when you play it, because it seems there, much like Telltale games, it seems like there's lots of different ways things can go. So it's important to, it feels important to talk to other people who played it and be like, what did you do? And how did you do the thing with the whatever? And it's weird to start that conversation and be like, hey, how'd your astronaut lady like handle this? And then they're like, well, I had a dude and he fell in a crater, like he just ate it and died. And it's like, oh, okay. And I am a big fan of Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
So Taylor is the main character in Planet of the Apes, and Taylor is the main character in this game, so I thought of like Guy immediately. But I'm going to say she just for this conversation because I need to start using pronouns. She does everything in real time. So when Taylor says it'll be like 6 hours to fix something or sleep or hike somewhere, it's actually about 6 hours until she checks back in. So she's banging around this empty moon after the plane, well, not plane crash, but the spaceship crash, and she's trying to figure out a way how to get help from someone other than you, because it's kind of a weird, like, not entirely clear how she's talking to you, but she is. And you answer by either like this or that. So it'll be like, like she'll say like, for example, one of the questions that is not spoilery is, do you like chili with beans or without beans? And it just gives you the option of beans or without beans. So, it's simple, but it's really effective to the point of where sometimes it's tense and kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on with it. It's very simple in its presentation, and it's definitely a game that you could finish if you really wanted to. You could finish it in 2 days, probably. That said, I enjoyed it about as much as Arkham Knight, and that game had a budget that was big enough to send an actual human to an actual moon. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a feeling that we're getting some feedback with the, like, you have the game noise on, or is the game noise off?
Oh, I can turn it off real quick.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Not bad.
No, not your bad. We are testing, completely testing.
All right, that should work. Plus, we got stopped by some dude who wanted to steal our stuff.
This is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable.
The nerve.
Yeah. It's weird. It's gotta be something to do with the microphone. I don't know. We'll figure this out when we take it apart. But let's keep going with the podcasting and such. So I know we've gone back and forth about which is better. You and I have a kind of an ongoing conversation about whether Arkham Asylum or Arkham City is better. And
yeah. So you're bringing everybody into our private and intimate conversations.
Yeah, well, but it's because I finally figured out why I like Arkham City better than Arkham Asylum.
Why do I like Arkham Asylum?
No. I know why you do. Well, I guess you can make your argument and then I'll rebut, because I finally have a solid rebuttal to you. I really thought about it. Like, I spent like a good day or two thinking about why I like Arkham City, and I finally have a good rebuttal.
So I would say that Arkham Asylum is better because it's more of a tight experience that doesn't really promise you anything more than it actually is. The story is fine. The way that you do everything is fine. You don't have to do any extra exploring if you don't want to. And what exploring you do feels somewhat natural, I guess you could say. And as opposed to Arkham City, where everything just feels big all the time. And it's not, it's a lot looser. The whole concept of like, we need to save this really quick, Batman, or else the people will die. It kind of feels like it goes away when you have that, like you have a whole entire city to worry about, as opposed to just, you're running around a hospital. Then the sense of urgency sort of comes around. I would say those are the main reasons why I would say it's better.
And see, now to me, I think as like a Batman nerd, my Batman is sort of a combination of the comics Batman from like 2002 to about 2007, because that's when I started reading comics again when I was in college, and the animated Batman from the DC animated universe, because that's what I grew up watching. So That's great. I mean, it's a good thing because the Arkham games are heavily influenced by the Batman animated series. A lot of the voice actors are the same voice actors. Obviously, Kevin Conroy is still doing Batman, and it's Batman. Like, it sounds like Batman, but it boils down to two main things, which is gadgets and villains. The gadgets in Arkham Asylum were just stock Batman gadgets, like the sort of shit that you should expect that Batman has when he just kind of wakes up in the morning. Like the bat claw and the lawn launcher, and like even the explosive gel. Like the explosive gel was a unique like gadget that you had to go back to the Batmobile and get. Like that was a big deal in Arkham Asylum. And that kind of meant that all the gameplay had to be based around you not having tons of bat gadgets, which meant that all, like you were saying the last time you had this conversation, you made the point that the Riddler trophies in Asylum felt hidden, and they felt like Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Whereas in City, they're openly displayed puzzles that are a major part of the game. Like, you should get them or do those puzzles.
Oh, like, yeah, I remember I made fun of the idea that, like, you have this dude who's running around the city, you know, just putting together all of these puzzles and whatnot. And, like, what would that have looked like when he was actually doing it?
Yeah, but to me that makes perfect sense because that's what the Riddler is. He's a guy who's really weird about puzzles and will go around the city, you know, hiring people and spending millions of dollars to have these, you know, ridiculous puzzles everywhere to show that Batman is stupid and the Riddler is smarter, and how a simple puzzle can fool Batman and then things like that. And to me, that's just like, all right, cool. I like that because that's part of it. Like gadgets and villains. Gadgets and villains. That's what I like about Arkham City. And the gadgets, there are a lot of gadgets, or there's a fair amount of gadgets in Arkham City. And it's all related to the Riddler trophies or puzzles or whatever it is, and they sort of kind of integrate into fighting. Like you could use gadgets while fighting. Mm-hmm. I think you could in Arkham Asylum, but I don't remember ever doing it because it always felt really weird. And it felt still kind of weird in Arkham City, but less weird, definitely. And definitely like more, it was more apart, especially because like they had a place. Like the bat shark repellent. Like there was very clearly a place for the gadgets. Like this is what you did to solve a puzzle with it. This is what you did to use it in a fight. This is what you did when you were fighting bosses. And I like that. I like all the inventive uses for gadgets and Batman throwing everything he's got at a certain situation and is able to escape whatever it is. And I'm a huge fan of that, so much so that I can kind of forgive that it doesn't feel as tight. The story isn't as good. Because honestly, the story, you're right, the story is kind of a mess in Arkham City because it messes the timeline up. It kind of feels over the top and ridiculous of like, quick Batman, like, here's another villain that's going to like destroy a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, oh no, like, why do they all plan tonight of all nights to be the night that, you know, but that's fine. I mean, especially because I know that a lot of it was the Catwoman DLC was a big part of it, that you were constantly going back and forth with Catwoman and whatever else, which I loved. I loved all that. But
yeah, I've always felt like the Catwoman DLC could have been better in a lot of ways. Like it just sort of felt like here. So for example, like the Nightwing and like the what is it, Robin, and like Robin. Those the one DLC for Robin was really cool because you got to play as Robin and you're like looking for Batman and stuff like that. But playing as Catwoman in Arkham City always felt like it was sort of tacked on in a lot of ways. Like it could have been, it felt like a thing that was made and then they took it apart and said, here, you can buy it now or wait till the Game of the Year edition comes out. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't want to crap on it too bad.
No. It's not Asylum. It's not lean. It's not tight. There's a sort of sense of ambiguity in things. Like when you do stuff, you're not exactly sure if it's going to work or not until you do it. And then sometimes stuff works and you're kind of like, oh, that was fortuitous. Like that worked out pretty well. Whereas, you know, it's just not. In Arkham Asylum, you always feel like Batman, I think is the thing I've said time and time again. Like when I played Arkham Asylum, pretty much from minute one, I felt like I was Batman. Whereas in Arkham City, it takes a while to feel like Batman. and you kind of feel like Jeff Batman. Batman's well-meaning but still kind of learning the ropes cousin that has to fill in during Batman's darkest hour. And certainly you feel that way with Catwoman. You feel that way with Robin. Like, you feel that way with whoever you get like dumped into the shoes of. Like I just thinking back on it, I know when I was playing the game, you and I had a conversation about how I kept doing nose dives in like dumpsters, and like I would get my ass handed to me from time to time. And it took me a while to like really get in the groove of things, especially because I'm not very good with the knife. Like anybody has a knife, like the guys that fight with you that have knives. I've just never been good at whatever the thing is for those until I learned like you can just jump over them. It's no big deal, whatever. But it took me a while to get that under control. And when I got there, I felt so much more like Batman. And I felt like I hit peak Batman because there was it was a bunch of great fights in that game and really good boss battles. And those really weren't in Arkham Asylum because like even the final battle in City, which I'm not going to spoil, but it's kind of underwhelming and unremarkable. I still don't really remember all of it. I remember the gadget you have to use, and I kind of remember why it happens, but it kind of feels unremarkable. And that's still way better than the final boss battle in Asylum, which was a rehash of earlier fights just with the Joker. Like, it was like, here's what you did before, but now it's the Joker instead.
Yeah.
And
it was a combination of everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Like, that's definitely, if you want to teach people mechanics, like, that's the way you do it, is you teach them, you test them, you teach them, you test them, and that's great. But after a while, to me, I'd kind of prefer the bloated mess that is Arkham City because it just feels more like Batman to me. And maybe that, like I said, man, that's just a personal preference in Batman. I like the Catwoman stuff. I actually really think that she should have gotten her own game, and that's where they should have gone after Arkham City, is they should have made a Catwoman game.
Yeah, I can totally get behind like that idea.
Yeah, because what Arkham Knight became, or what it is like 60% great, 20% kind of terrible, and like 20% downright awful. And like the combat is still the best it's ever been. And if they would have gone in the direction of like making a Catwoman game or a Robin game or something else, whatever, I feel like they could have done something good, because the combat and all that stuff, like especially the detective stuff, the combat, it all felt better. The combat felt really fluid. It felt like all the gadgets and takedowns and there's a new thing called fear combo, or a fear like thing that you can do. It all blends together and makes like the ultimate Batman fighting experience in a way that I wish they would have done something that wasn't like about Batman. And like therein lies the problem with sequels, is that you want to keep things fresh but also somehow preserve what worked before. And sometimes the best way to do that is to go in a different direction. And like it seems like it's almost impossible to do after Arkham City. Because that's what they did. Like, that's what they did in Arkham City. They went a different direction, and they still kind of kept it the same, and they preserved what worked, and they kind of moved forward. And that makes sense, and it was good. And I put like 200 hours into Arkham City. So I played that game. I got all the Riddler trophies and all the rest of that. I played it again. I probably got all the Riddler trophies a second time. I love the shit out of that game. And in Arkham Knight, I couldn't give a shit about any of it. Like, the story, the Riddler trophies, like, it's just... I tried really hard to like it, and then everything just became about the car, about the Batmobile. Like, it just felt so much like I played Arkham Origins and I hated it. I turned it off. Like, I was actually playing it most of the time I was talking to you, and I played about 10 hours of it. And I was like, I can't play this. It's just not right. Like, it just didn't feel. It didn't really work for me. But now this one does work for me, and then they're like, hey, Batmobile, and I know like everyone complains about the Batmobile, and I know that my complaint about the Batmobile is pretty simple. And it's what hundreds of assholes on the internet said before me, and it's that you don't add a clunky new system to a game that's already like you don't take something that's already a complex and rewarding collection of systems, and then just slap this clunky mess on top of it and think like, oh, that's going to make it better. Like, especially when all of those previous systems are so well done. Like, even some of the detective stuff they've taken from Arkham Origins, like, they've tested this stuff before. Everything is well tested and tried, and it works, and it makes you feel like Batman, and it's a good Batman experience. And then you have this new system where you can't really provide feedback in the way you do with the other ones. Like when you're fighting guys, you get some time to work that out. Like you figure out how that works. And you can mess up a couple of times when you're fighting, like way more than usual. And
so it's actually, it sounds a lot more like Shadow of Mordor in that way.
Well, the combat's always like Shadow of Mordor. Like in all the Batman games, like the combat is a tight thing. Like you know why you fuck up when you fight somebody in Batman. Like that guy beat me up, I didn't counter that. That's why that happened. I have to counter that guy in the future. Or a guy charged me, I didn't do the right move, and that's why that's fucking up, and that's why that problem is that's why that is that way. Whereas with the Batmobile, it require okay, so like there's jumping puzzles and there's all sorts of other stuff, but you fuck up in the Batmobile, you fuck up big, and you fuck up in a way that requires a teaching moment that often isn't there. Like when I fuck up when I'm fighting, the game will be like, okay, well you got to dodge that. It's like, okay, cool, I can do that. I can dodge that in the future. Whereas the Batmobile stuff, it's like you'll be trying to figure something out, and it's more about figuring out what the game designer wanted you to figure out instead of pretending to be Batman. So like if you're fighting, if you just pretend to be Batman, like you basically get it. Like Batman blocks people, Batman combos things, Batman throws batarangs, like you just pretend to be Batman and everything's okay. When you're driving around the Batmobile, it's more about like, oh, what did Ricky the game designer do in this situation? Because everything is meant to progress in a certain way and work in a certain way. And I know a lot of people didn't like the tank combat, but the tank combat is because the tank combat's dumb, it's repetitive and it's tedious, but at least you can kind of understand like how the tank combat works after a tutorial. And generally when they introduce a new tank combat enemy, it's like, what does this tank combat enemy do? Oh, it's like a tank, but it's like the previous one, but now it fires 3 projectiles instead of 1. Okay, what's that one do? Oh, it's just tougher than the other tanks. Okay, what's that one do? Oh, it's a tank, but it flies. Okay, what's that one do? It's a tank, but it fires rockets, so it's an arc instead of a straight shot. It's like, okay, so it's dumb, but you get it. And I really, like, I don't think anybody who plays AAA games would really have, like, a huge problem with the tank combat. It's hard, but it's not impossible. And it's certainly tedious, but it's not really that bad. It's doable. Especially stuff that's just story-related, it's all doable. Whereas the jumping puzzles and the races and everything else with that require a level of patience. And I guess like mind reading, I don't even know what phrase to use there. Like it just requires something that it just makes me feel like it's a massive waste of time. Like if you think that it's stupid that the Riddler went around and placed a bunch of trophies everywhere in Arkham City, I can't even imagine what you think about the Riddler spending his time building racetracks so that Batman can race the Batmobile around.
Yeah, I'd have a huge... I don't know, like, but I'm one of those weird people who take stories seriously in video games.
No, I do too. I think that story and mechanics should be and aesthetics and everything should be connected, and that's how things should work. I'm tough on video games too. That's why I didn't like any of this. But I don't know. I feel like
we're going to George Lucas station.
Oh, okay. I feel like I've been talking about Batman for too long. So I guess my review of it was that it's a delicious sandwich, like that you remember from your childhood, like that. Like think back and be like, man, that was the most delicious sandwich I ever had when I was a kid. And then like your grandma comes over, and grandma's like, Jaymin, I'm gonna make you a delicious sandwich, and you're like, oh man, that's the sandwich I remember from my childhood. But the problem is your grandma's gone senile, and she thinks that you've been stealing her pills. And so she just smears shit all over a sandwich and then just slaps down in front of you and is like, there you go, now eat it for grandma. And like that's how it feels. You're just like kind of eating this shit smeared sandwich and you're like, it's so good, but so covered in shit.
If only it didn't taste like poop.
Exactly, yeah. I love you, grandma, but you know. So yeah. So that's what I've been playing. That's what you've been playing. You have a question for me?
Not really. I think you covered it. I honestly never really planned on getting any of the Arkham games ever again. Not really. After Origins, I was just like, okay, I'm done.
No, I meant like the question. Like, do you have a question? Like a big question for me?
The question.
I didn't think you would have anything to say beyond like fuck those games, fuck that game, fuck everyone who made that game. I know that you love Shadow of Mordor, which I will play sometime in the next month. I know that you love it so much.
Oh, dude, I love that game so much. Yeah. It was hard to make a video where I made fun of it. So, the question. Why did Hitman get a movie, but Halo doesn't?
That is a complex answer, and I will have to. Okay, so a while ago I was doing research for a book about video games that I was going to write, and I read a book called Generation Xbox by Jamie Russell. And if you want to know more about it, you can go read Generation Xbox. And despite the less than stellar name of it, which I think is kind of a dumb name, but whatever, it's a really good video game history book, especially because it is all about how Hollywood and video games and everybody else kind of got together, and then nothing really worked out particularly well. Starts with E.T., starts with Atari and E.T., and then continues on through basically a bit till about Halo. So, so the simple answer to that question is that only crappy video game movies get made because there's this huge culture clash between Hollywood and game publishers and developers, which is... So, okay, just like on a very basic level, think about it this way. You're going to make a movie, and you want to make a movie and you want it to succeed, then the thing that you need is on-screen talent, like, say, a Bruce Willis type guy. Because Bruce Willis does really well. Like, people love Bruce Willis everywhere, all over the world. You'd be like, hey, I'm making this movie, and it's got Bruce Willis in it. And people were like, shit, I love Bruce Willis. I'll go see that movie. But then you're going to make a video game. It's a pretty good sign that a video game is going to suck when you find out that there's like some big celebrity that's in the video game, because that means that they blew a huge chunk of their money on getting Bruce Willis to do shitty voice actor work. Because popular actors don't want to spend 2 years in a mocap suit, and that's what those games require. Like, that's what a game like GTA 5 requires, is like 2 years of dudes in mocap suits, or ladies in mocap suits doing whatever they're doing, and that's like, fucking, you're not going to get somebody who's making like $20 million a movie to be like, yeah, fuck it, I'll spend 2 years of my life, making a video game. Like, no, unless they love video games, which is very rare.
But Joey, what are you saying? Are you saying that Star Citizen is going to suck?
I'm saying that Star Citizen is putting a lot of money into something that maybe they shouldn't. Historically, it's been that, like, I think, okay, when was the last time there was a game that was primarily the selling point of the game was about... Okay, so that's the thing. Star Citizen isn't primarily about Gary Oldman.
That's true. Or Gillian Anderson or anything.
Or Gillian Anderson, or in the same way that's like me saying, like, well, Liam Neeson is a huge actor. He's a huge talent, but he was in Fallout 3. Does that mean that Fallout 3 is a crappy game? No, Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games ever. So it's just because that was not... Liam Neeson was like the sprinkles on the cake that is, or the cupcake that is Fallout 3, where there are lots of games where they tried for a while to incorporate Hollywood talent into it. The reason I say Bruce Willis is because there was a PlayStation game with Bruce Willis in it. I remember vaguely. I want to say it was called Apocalypse or something like that, and they blew a good chunk of their money on getting Bruce Willis, and that game sucked diddly-ucked. Oh, it was terrible, because you can't do that. You can't blow like 20 people's salaries on Bruce Willis doing voice acting. It's just not, like, I'm sorry to rag on Bruce Willis, but he just doesn't, he's
not gonna be good enough for your game. Like,
no, he's not.
And be like, oh my god, Bruce Willis's voice is so good. Like, that is worth the price of admission alone.
If you had a text adventure game that was narrated by Bruce Willis, and it was about, like, saving Bruce Willis on a planet in space, like if he was an astronaut that was lost on a planet and you had to save Bruce Willis, then I could understand maybe that would be a thing. But games are primarily about game mechanics, and they're primarily about gameplay. It's not about, like the voice. You don't have to have voice actors. We proved that for decades, where games did not have voice actors in them and did not have, big name talents in them. And that's why video games tend to be more about concrete things. They tend to be more about, like, is this a tight mechanic? Is this a good feedback loop? Is this, is this a good game? You have very objectively. I mean, that's why for years you had like game reviewers were like, well, the sound is a 5 and the graphics are a 4. It's like you go see a movie like, well, the sound is a 5. The graphics are a 4. The Hobbit movies had higher FPS than other movies, so they're better. They run better on the IMAX technology than. So it's like you can't judge movies that way, and it's just not how Hollywood works and how they do those things. So that's a kind of very short answer, but the longer answer, at least a slightly longer answer, is money. And so Hitman, first Hitman movie made 99 million, I think I said.
Yeah, and they only spent like 30 million on it or something.
24 is 99 against a budget of 24, and that's not crazy great for Hollywood, but it's, considering how terrible that movie is, it's certainly something.
It's pretty close to the margins of Birdemic right there.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. In Hollywood, you can make a fucking turd burger of a movie, and if you know how to sell it and you know how to like frame it, then it can be something that makes money. And especially too, because you have foreign audiences, you have like, when you make a game, you're typically making a game for a worldwide audience, but generally it tends to be for English-speaking audiences when you make most video games.
Mm-hmm.
And those are certain audiences. I mean, like, even clearly, like, you look at games, and there are games that you can tell are made for South Koreans. There's games that are made for Russians. There are games that are made for specific audiences. But when movies are made, they're made for fucking everybody, because that's how they make movies nowadays. Like, that's why, like, everyone, it's like, why was there a random thing about like China and Iron Man 3? It's like, because they want to make more money in China. That's why. Like, that's smart. Like, that's what they do. They make these movies that are, $200 million or $300 million, and they're able to sell them across every market in the world, and then broadcast them on TV all around the world. And all you have to do is just translate them. And it's super easy to translate 2 hours of film. It's extremely fucking hard to translate, hours and hours and hours of voice acting and, text and gameplay shit and everything else. It's just complicated in a different way. So they make the first Hitman movie, makes, like I said, about $100 million against a quarter of $100 million, so $24 million. And then you have the lead actor is Timothy Olyphant, who was just coming from Deadwood after Deadwood got canceled, and he doesn't want to do a sequel because he doesn't. And he said, and he made it very clear that the only reason he did the first movie was because he had to pay off his mortgage because Deadwood got canceled. So doesn't look so good for the Hitman series. And then they figure, like, okay, we got to get another guy that, like, people know, but he's not like a big budget or anything, like not a big budget actor or anything. He's just a knowable name. So we're gonna get Paul Walker, and then that didn't work out because, Paul Walker died. And so they got some other random dude. I don't even know who he is really. And they made a sequel, and that was Hitman Agent 47. Which was a budget of $35 million, and it made $82 million. And while I haven't seen it, the reviews were way worse than the first movie, and that is fucking saying something. So it's really something that movie made about as much as the original did. $82 million. That is fucking crazy. Especially when you compare both of those movies to the vastly superior and very similar John Wick, which was $86 million against a budget of $20 million. So it shouldn't be a shock that they're going to make another Hitman movie. They want to make another Hitman movie. So why are they doing this? Like, let's continue talking about the money side of this, which is Square Enix, who owns Hitman, makes about $1.5 billion a year. So $1.5 billion every year is what they're pulling in revenue. Now, look at Halo, for example. You're talking about Halo.
Enix?
Square Enix, yeah.
Oh, okay. Not Final Fantasy Square Enix.
Yeah, the same.
Oh,
yeah,
no, they're the same. Yeah.
They're the same. They own Hitman. Yeah.
Oh man, dude, this is why we have all of these like character angle problems when they make characters, because they get all their money from Hitman movies. We are fueling their insane character angles with cocaine money made from movies. First
off, if you want to say anything about them, I wouldn't say cocaine money. I would say that it's more like Schadenfreude Fred, how you pronounce that? Money.
Schadenfreude money.
Yeah, there you
Okay,
go.
yeah.
You got to help me with pronunciation sometimes. We'll learn that for when we're doing episode 1. So actually, they had a scandal that they were causing. Like, if you did poorly, like if you had really bad sales numbers, or if you like dishonored your family or whatever it was, they like make you clean the employee gym and like make you do like chores around the office and like shame you as you're doing it. Like they're fucking. Wait, no, hold on. Was that Square Enix or was that Konami? I think that was Konami. Yeah, sorry, that was Konami. I apologize. That was Konami. But Konami's another company that's like Square Enix, Ubisoft, and Konami. Like, it's fair to say they make somewhere between like $1 billion, $1.5 billion. They'll never really make more than $2 billion a year.
Well, yeah, because Konami is making pachinko machines for Silent Hill.
But they've all made terrible mistakes. Every company has made terrible mistakes. Like, they're still like, surprisingly, these are $1 billion companies, but they still fuck shit up all the time. Yeah, and that's like, that's how that shit goes. Like, comparatively, so Ubisoft makes about $1.5 billion. I think they made $1.6 billion in revenue last time they posted numbers for it and everything. EA, by comparison, makes $4.5 billion a year.
Oh yeah,
but EA is very diverse. They have they got the fucking Madden games. They've got, they do really well. So
they have Mass Effect. So
well, they got lots of propries. Like I said, they're very diverse.
They'll be rolling in the money for forever if they got Mass Effect.
No, I think that Mass Effect might be considered like a loss leader for them compared to like Madden, for example, or FIFA. Whereas, okay, so that like $1 billion, $1.5 billion, like $2 billion most. EA is making $4.5 billion. Microsoft, which owns Halo, makes $93 billion a year.
That's insane.
Yeah, because they're Microsoft and they're huge, and they're this huge company that does lots and lots of things. So let's say you're making $93 billion every year, and someone offers you a chance to make $93 million off of one of your super popular brands that you own, like this thing that you own, this Halo that you own. Chances are you don't want to take that deal. Like, that's not a deal that you're super happy to take. Like, $93 million for Halo is not like, that's risky. Like, if they fuck that up, not only do you lose out on the possibility of $93 million, but it hurts your brand. Like, if it fucks up that thing that you have. And pretty much like Gears of War is kind of sort of associated with Microsoft, but like Halo is fucking Microsoft. Like, their version of Siri is called Cortana. Like, they love Halo. Like, Halo is a major part of who Microsoft is. So like, that's worth noting in the overall context of how all this stuff works.
So would it be fair to say that there's a better chance of like there being a Mass Effect movie than there would be of a Halo or even Gears of War, really, because Gears of War does well?
Absolutely. I would say there's a better chance of there being a Gears of War movie than a Halo movie. I'd say there's a much better chance of there being a Mass Effect movie than there would be a Halo movie, because it's just not. But even then, okay, minor aside, you're talking about Hollywood making science fiction movies, which they generally don't want to do because science fiction movies are really expensive and they're still considered kind of schlocky. Like, Hollywood really went out of its way to like make a lot of B movies about science fiction properties, and there's lots and lots of science fiction like books and source material that just hasn't been touched because Hollywood doesn't want to get involved in it. Also, because for quite a while there, it required a lot of special effects, whereas you could get a guy and like a bunch of guns and some dudes, Italian dudes who pretend to be Native Americans, and you can make a cowboy movie. Or you could make like a racing movie, like the fucking first Fast and the Furious movie was made about a bunch of dudes in cars stealing DVD players, and like that's a movie. And now they're making like hundreds of millions upon billions of dollars with that franchise. Like, why would you want to risk anything by having this highly, extremely expensive, highly special effects intensive, movie? So. That's already something of like, well, I don't, making a science fiction movie is scary to Hollywood. So let's go back to Microsoft. So you're making $93 billion a year. Someone makes an offer to you and says, we'll give you, like I said, let's say $93 million. So off the top of, that's not the number that got thrown around, but let's say $93 million. You're not going to want to take that. It's just not going to work out for you.
And this also happens to be the guy who just made the critically acclaimed Lord of the Rings film.
Well, hold on. I'm not to that yet. We didn't get there yet. So
yet.
Microsoft actually didn't get like a deal from anybody. It was actually that they hired a writer to write a script. They hired somebody. They came up with terms. They got a bunch of dudes and they dressed them up as Master Chief. And on like a Monday in 2005, they sent out all these dudes dressed up as Master Chief, and they delivered their terms and scripts to all the different studios all around Hollywood. And because it's Hollywood, so you want to be really fucking showy and make the papers, and everyone being like, "Oh my God, Master Chief's walking around town delivering Halo scripts. Like Halo's gonna be a movie." But the point was that like they wanted to make a big deal out of it because that's what everyone told Microsoft to do, because they put $1 million into that screenplay at that point. And they wanted to go to Hollywood and basically dictate terms and say, this is what we want, because we think we have a brand and a property that's on par with Star Wars. And like that's not an exaggeration. So in 2010, Frank O'Connor, who is the manager of the the guy who oversees the Halo franchise for Microsoft, he said his actual direct quote was, "We have a lot in common with Star Wars when it comes to having a big universe, recognizable characters, and fundamentally cool stuff. A lot of studios and film companies and game companies have tried to create their own Star Wars, but you can't set out to make a successful franchise on purpose. It has to be something that fans are attracted to and love. There's only so much you can do to achieve that deliberately, but it always comes down to great story and characters." So to them, they wanted to, make a great movie with a great story and characters and all the right things, and they wanted Hollywood to hear, get this script and be like, holy shit, Microsoft is being nice enough to allow us to make a Halo movie. And now cut to 2015, same guy, Frank O'Connor, and he says, he goes, the Halo film is it's hard to translate the game to film. We had an experience with that with Peter Jackson, but the only way we could solve that problem is just by giving it a longer form. And we tried that. We worked previously with Steven Spielberg on a TV series, and it gave it the air and space it needs to breathe because it's a big universe. And like that's sort of like the bullshit way of like, we keep fucking trying this goddamn thing and it just won't work. So it just needs some room to breathe. Because like they tried to take their franchise and force themselves on Hollywood, and all the studios looked at it and said, oh, this is Microsoft like muscling their way into our movie business, and they can go fuck themselves. Which is what happened, because then like all these movie studios got together and they said like, well, what are you gonna do? Because everyone knows each other in Hollywood. It's not like in video games. Like people, yes, every once in a while there'll be a game designer that talks to a game designer at Ubisoft that talks to a game designer at EA, but generally like you don't talk about things when you're in game design. Like you don't talk about things when you're developing games. Like it's like there's non-disclosure agreements. Like everything's very secretive. You don't want to talk about what your next big property is or how badly things are going and how you have to turn your game into something that resembles Destiny instead of DayZ. And
you don't want to talk about how you're going to turn a awesome game into a pachinko machine.
Yeah, no, you don't want to talk about any of that. You just want people to think that you're just gonna like piss brilliance forever. And so in Hollywood, they don't give a shit. Like it's old school. Everyone talks to everybody. So what happened was that Microsoft came around and said like, this is what you're gonna do, and everyone in Hollywood was like, nope. To the point of where actually, and this sounds insane based on anyone who knows, like if you know anything about like how Marvel works on anybody, like Marvel has had such problems working with Fox, and like everything's a big fucking deal. Fox and Universal actually teamed up because they just didn't want to give Microsoft what it wanted. and so they teamed up and they said like, okay, we're going to make this big budget movie, but like you have to understand you're not going to be able to get what you want because it's not how things work. So they brought in Peter Jackson because they wanted Peter Jackson attached. And Peter Jackson was like, all right, cool. And later on, like Steven Spielberg came in because obviously Steven Spielberg was involved with the TV show and whatever else. Like he gets his cut. Like that's how this works. Like the screenwriter gets his cut, producers get their cut. Everyone gets their stuff, and the movie's got to have well-known actors in it. And like the studio obviously has to get their cut too. And like at the end of the day, there's really not a whole lot left for Microsoft because like unless the project is a huge success, it's just like you're putting probably $200 million into a movie, and the movie studios want to keep that. Like they want to keep whatever's coming back in to fund the next $200 million movie. They don't want to give it out to Microsoft. So
yeah,
And that's if the project if the project is a success and everything kind of works out. And that also assumes that like Microsoft is gonna be like, yeah, whatever, cool, and you know, let Hollywood tell us what to do, and obviously like fuck our existing plans for the brand. Like you can't really, like, you don't want fucking Master Chief taking off his helmet in a movie 6 weeks before Halo 6 comes out, and that's their big thing or whatever it is. You know, like you have to be able to, if you want to control Halo and you want to be in charge of Halo, you have to be in charge of Halo. You can't hand it to somebody else and say like, you know, here you go. So they wanted control and money, and that all made sense. Like it all made sense because they didn't want anyone to fuck their shit up. And slowly over from 2005, 2006, 2007, that's what happened, is things just got fucked up and fell apart. They wanted Peter Jackson. Instead, they got Neil Blomkamp, who did District 9.
And Elysium, but at the time, he hadn't made anything.
He hadn't made anything, yeah. So he was just an unproven director at the time. Peter Jackson said, this guy is perfect. You should do this. I'm Peter Jackson, and I'm going to stay on board. And I think they paid him like a few $1 million just to be a producer to kind of like stay attached to the project. And Peter Jackson was happy to do that, but he didn't want to direct a new franchise. He didn't want to do a thing. So, you know, Microsoft kept saying like, we want Peter Jackson, and the studios were like, fucking, why do you want Peter Jackson? We got this other guy and he's new and he doesn't cost a whole lot, and that's a pretty good deal for us because it's cheaper that way. We can get this thing going. It was just like a clusterfuck from day one because Microsoft wanted control over everything, and Hollywood, you know, Fox and Universal didn't really want that. So Universal got very angry about things, and it's $1 billion brand, and Blomkamp just wanted to make a good movie, which is totally understandable. And at the time, the budget was definitely over $1 million, over $100 million. And yeah, Microsoft just still was like, yeah, what about our money? And you know, and Peter Jackson wanted his money, and everybody wanted their money. And then basically Universal felt like they were just kind of throwing around money, and they were never going to make it back, and this thing was going to be a huge mess. And by about 2007, pretty much everyone said like, well, this whole thing fell apart and let's just give up on it. And they ended up using the movie props in commercials for Halo 3.
Yep.
Yeah. So now rewind to what you were saying before about the Hitman movies. Like, let's say you're making like 1.5 billion a year, because that's what Square Enix is doing. And that's Square Enix worldwide is making 1.5 billion. And somebody comes along in America and says, hey, do you want to make like 20 million bucks and you don't got to do shit? And someone's going to go, yeah, like that's fucking awesome. I would love to make $20 million and not do shit. And then they'll go like, okay, well, you know, Hitman movie, because why not? Like there's absolutely nothing a Hitman movie could do to the Hitman brand that the Hitman games haven't been doing. And they haven't been doing them themselves, but just like fucking ruining that franchise. So they don't really give a shit. Whereas Hollywood looks at that franchise and sees like it's a totally viable property because it's popular overseas. It's a well-known video game. It's violent as shit. It doesn't require any nudity or sex because the games don't have nudity or sex in them. So you can just make them super mega violent. And you can slam pretty much any actors or actresses you want in them because whoever tests well and whoever is really popular with audiences and whatever, because it's just a bald guy who kills people. He doesn't really even say much. Like, you don't even need a good actor for that role. You can get a good villain, and then you can get like a hot girl, and you can get a bunch of actors that test really well in overseas audiences to make sure that everyone else feels included and everybody wants to go see it. And you can play them up in advertising and whatever else, and there you go. And like, there's your movie. So you can kind of go about that and then write whatever story you want. You're not spending $1 million on a fucking script. I would be surprised if they spent like a box of Fruit Loops on a script because it's fucking Hitman. And you can generally you don't have to worry about like the studio brings in somebody and they're like, oh, this guy's demanding a whole bunch of money. It's like, all right, shit can him, because you just want to keep the budget small and that's what you want to do, and you want to appeal to the most, you know, people. And hopefully you release it in a time of the year. Like if a Halo movie came out, they would have to run a Halo movie like midsummer up against Marvel movies and DC movies and, you know, Star Wars or whatever else it is. Like you'd have to, like, it's a big franchise that's going to have to compete with big franchises. Otherwise it looks really, really strange to release like Halo in like end of August or September. You know, like that would,
January.
yeah, or January. Yeah, it'd be super fucking weird to do that. And then they're not going to do that. They're going to make a big budget Halo. If they ever do, it'll be a big budget Halo, and it's going to be released. And you know, they want it to compete with other big franchises because they want the next big franchise. Because that's like the worst thing one of the worst things you can do is put out an expensive movie that you can't sell. The only thing worse than that is taking something that could be a big franchise and this big budget movie. And that everybody thinks is like Star Wars, you know, they're saying like it's a huge universe and Halo's the next Star Wars, and then turning it into like Avatar: The Last Airbender. and there's always a possibility of that happening. Like it's genuinely always a possibility of that happening unless everyone is just like, unless everything works out perfectly, which it probably won't. And I think Microsoft is too invested that I don't think that they'll ever really make a Halo movie in the way that you think they will make a Halo movie. They'll make all the little movies like the Halo Forward Unto Dawn and whatever, but I don't think they'll ever make like a big budget Hollywood movie in the next like 10, 15 years probably.
And I would agree. I think there's a better chance at them making, or somebody making, like you said, like more Hitman movies, or even a Mass Effect movie. I think is probably pretty viable.
It would be if that brand is still popular worldwide, and you know they can, and the movie studio gets control over it, and they can do whatever they want. Like that's, so you're talking about, not only you're talking about a franchise, like I said, the current Hitman movie will not hurt the future Hitman game no matter what it does,
right.
And that's how you make sure that that's going to happen. Whereas the Halo movie or the Gears of War movie or the Mass Effect movie or whatever it is could potentially hurt the performance of the next game or hurt the brand, and then it's not worth risking. Because the publisher isn't going to make, if they're not going to make a few $100 million off of it, why the hell would you risk $1 billion franchise?
I know.
Yeah.
What should be made.
What's that?
Space.
I don't think that'll work. I don't think that'll work. Yeah.
I don't know how you would translate a city builder into a movie, but I'm sure it could be done.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap up. So, wow, what are you playing next? What are you excited about playing next?
Well, what I have to play next is Banished at some point. I'm not really excited about playing that, but that's the thing I'll play soon. One of these days.
Okay. Banished.
Pretty soon.
What's that?
Not Banished. The Banner Saga. That's
Banner Saga. Yeah, I was gonna say you played
Saga.
Banished already. I know you played Banished already. Banner Saga. Well, okay. I know you kind of don't really like the whole Banner Saga thing.
I don't like. It's a text game. It's. This is gonna be a joke that's in my movie, I'm sure, but like it's what you get if you took like Oregon Trail, a text-based like create your own adventure storybook game, and XCOM Combat, and put it all together into this giant mess.
Well, XCOM Combat and other things is not necessarily a bad idea because that's what the Shadowrun games do, and those are really good.
Oh,
so,
I'm not saying that like taking XCOM Combat is bad. I'm just saying that in the way that all of it gets put together, it ends up not being.
Just tastes like crap. I understand.
Yeah, it just tastes like poop.
Okay, I understand. All right, that's fair. I next up for me is Life is Strange.
I gotta play that too.
Yeah, I'm super excited to play it. I'll probably talk about it next time. And maybe if they're running it again, if they have a second beta for The Division. And I think I'm going to play Shadow of Mordor eventually. I don't know. I know I'm going to end up probably playing Fables, the Wolf Among Us game soon. Life is Strange probably within the next week. And then whenever I can fit it in, Shadow of Mordor. I got work, man. I got to, be an adult. Got to adult around the space truck. So yeah.
Speaking of which, in the future, sometime this year, they will actually be releasing an update where 2 people can drive a ship. So that's a thing.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my. I'll keep that in mind for future space trucking. All right. Well, I think it's about time to end this transmission. So, how can everyone find you if they want to talk to you?
They can check out Twitter at Plastic Nights, and there's also a Facebook page at Plastic Nights. And I have a YouTube channel as well called Plastic Nights. It's pretty much just Plastic Nights all the time.
Okay. I am on Twitter at Joey Heflich, HEFLICH, and yeah, you could find me, I guess, on YouTube too. But I don't really do anything, so just for this test episode.
You release videos? What are you talking about?
I release clips of video games whenever I feel like it, and that's about it.
That's true.
Yeah, you can usually find me over at the podcast Internet Boyfriends, and you can find that by just Googling Internet Boyfriends. So,
you know, people are really lazy. They're gonna want it in like the
I know. I don't know. No, you gotta work for it. You gotta work for my love. That's how that works. All right. Well, it is time to sign off. This space base, or God, now you got me all messed up. Space truck captain's log is coming to an end. So, this is us signing off. See you next time.
Bye.